They told him he was quirkless. The registry said so. The scanner said so. His mother cried, and he filed it away in a notebook he didn't yet have words to fill. Then, on an ordinary afternoon in a schoolyard, his hands came together, and two boys switched places. Not an explosion, not a glow, not anything the hero registry had ever seen, just a clap, and the world quietly rearranged itself. He wasn't given a gift. He was given a loaded gun and 13 notebooks to figure out how to aim it.
The world did not give him a gift. It gave him a loaded gun. The waiting room of the Quirk Registry office smelled like antiseptic and crushed hopes. Plastic chairs lined the walls in institutional rows. The color of old teeth, and a television mounted near the ceiling played a loop of pro-hero highlights on mute. On the screen, Endeavor was melting the chassis of a bank-robbing villain. No one in the waiting room was watching. Izuku Midoriya sat very still between his mother and the armrest of the chair, his hands folded in his lap like a boy in church. He was 4 years old. He had not yet learned that stillness and calm were different things. Izuku, his mother's voice, was the kind of soft that meant she was trying not to be loud about something. She reached over and smoothed down a tuft of his hair. "They'll call us soon. It's okay. It's okay," he thought, and filed it away the way he filed away everything, into a small, neat mental notebook that he would take out later, in his room, and look at very carefully. But why does she keep saying that? People say things are okay when they're worried they might not be. The doctor's name was Dr. Fujimoto, and he had kind eyes above his mask. He walked them into an examination room that had a chart of quirk types on the wall. Emitter, transformation, mutant, and a scanning machine the size of a small refrigerator. Izuku had read about these. He'd read about everything. He had 3 notebooks at home already, filled edge to edge in his cramped, careful handwriting. "All right, young Midoriya," Dr. Fujimoto said, holding a small device to the back of Izuku's foot. "This won't hurt. We're just going to check on your toe joints, and then we'll do the aura scan." Toe joints. Because quirk users have 1 fewer joint in their pinky toe. That's the physical marker. That's how they know. The doctor was quiet for a moment. Then he held up the X-ray film to the light. Izuku could see it from where he sat. Both pinky toes, both of them, had the full 2 joints. The room got very quiet in a way that was different from the waiting room quiet. This was the quiet of a held breath. "Inko-san." Dr. Fujimoto set the film down with more care than it needed. "The X-ray indicates it's possible that Izuku may have been born without a quirk. Some children present latently. We should run the aura scan to confirm, but..." "Please," his mother said. Just that word. The aura scan came back flat. No output signature. No dormant manifestation. The column where a quirk type should have been printed said, "None, quirkless, confirmed." Izuku stared at those words for the length of time it took his mother to start crying. Quirkless, he thought. Quirkless. Quirkless. Say it enough, and it becomes a different kind of word. "I've been reading about quirks since I was 3. I've been taking notes. I thought." He didn't finish the thought. He folded it up and put it away, the way he put away everything that was too large for right now. 3 weeks later, in the small courtyard behind Aldera Elementary School, Katsuki Bakugo demonstrated his quirk for the first time with full explosive intent. Izuku watched from 15 feet away as his Kaken, the boy he'd grown up chasing through every back alley and playground in the neighborhood, cupped a palm full of brilliant orange-gold detonation and smiled the smile of someone who had just confirmed something they had always known. The other kids screamed with delight. They pressed forward, clamoring. He's going to be incredible, Izuku thought, and the thought sat next to the quirkless fact in his mental notebook, and they made uncomfortable neighbors. Deku, he startled. 2 of the older boys, 3rd graders, broad and with quirk-born confidence, were walking toward him. He recognized them. Hayashi and Otani, a pair who had recently decided that Izuku's habit of taking notes on everyone's quirks was creepy little weirdo stuff. "Still hanging around?" Hayashi said. His quirk was a minor magnetism type. He wore metal studs along his knuckles like a fashion statement. "The quirkless freak is watching again. You know you can't catch it, right?" Having a quirk isn't contagious, but whatever you have might be. Izuku took a step back. Then another. His notepad crinkled in his grip. Don't engage. You know what happens when you engage. Don't. Hey, Deku. Kaken hadn't moved. He was still surrounded by his crowd. And he wasn't going to intervene. He never intervened anymore. Not since his quirk came in. Not since he'd become something different, something elevated. But his voice carried all the same. Leave him alone. He's not worth it. Not worth it. Not worth defending. Not worth the effort of cruelty. Just not worth. That's what I am now. Hayashi grabbed the notepad. This was the thing that cracked something open. Later. Not the grab, not even the tearing of pages, but the sound of it. 3 months of careful notes in his careful handwriting. Pages about Bakugo's quirk and the homeroom teacher's wind generation and the girl who could make flowers grow from her palms, and the sound of it ripping was. Izuku's hands came together. It was not a fully deliberate thing, but it was not nothing, either. His arms had swung forward in an automatic flinching reach, trying to grab the notepad back. In the half-second where his palms were already swinging toward each other, some dark small part of him wanted Hayashi, simply elsewhere. Not hurt, not destroyed, just not here, not in this moment, not touching his things. The want was formless and fast, the way feelings are at 4 years old before language catches up to them. His palms met with a sharp, precise clap that rang through the courtyard like a struck bell. The world moved. Hayashi flew backward, straight backward, as if launched, and collided with Otani, who had been standing 2 meters to his left and was suddenly, inexplicably, in the space where Hayashi had just been. Both boys hit the ground hard, tangled and confused. The courtyard went absolutely silent. Izuku stood with his hands still pressed together, fingers spread, staring. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his ears. He looked from Hayashi on the right where Otani had been to Otani on the left where Hayashi had been, and then back at his own hands. They switched. They switched. I clapped, and did I do that? Did I do that? What is that? What the? Hayashi scrambled up, looking disoriented, like a man who'd been spun around and released. What did you do? Izuku opened his mouth, closed it. His brain was running analysis at a speed that left his words behind. The distance between the two boys had been approximately 2 meters. They had both been within his line of sight. The motion was different from any catalog quirk type he'd ever recorded. And he had wanted it, hadn't he? Not fully, not consciously. But something in him had pointed at the problem, and the ability had answered. The closest parallel in his notes was position exchange. I exchanged their positions. But quirks don't work like this. Quirks are explained, emitter, transformation, mutant. This is Deku has a quirk. Someone had said it. Izuku couldn't tell who. But the word hit the crowd like a stone hitting water, and suddenly everyone was rippling with it. Deku has a quirk. Deku has a quirk. The quirkless kid isn't quirkless. Katsuki Bakugo was looking at him. Not with the usual contemptuous dismissal. Not with boredom. He was looking at Izuku with an expression that Izuku had never seen on his face before. Something narrow and calculating and deeply, privately interested. The look of someone who had been keeping a very specific kind of score and had just found an entry they couldn't file. He covered it fast, folded it back behind the curled lip, but Izuku had seen it. He saw. Kaken saw what I just did. Izuku's hands were shaking. Not from fear, or not only from fear. From something that felt like standing at the edge of something vast, and not yet knowing whether it was a cliff or a door. Dr. Fujimoto stared at the readout for a very long time. This is unusual, he said, which was a spectacular understatement for a man looking at an aura scan that was simultaneously registering an output signature and returning the identifier flag that meant the system could not classify what it was detecting. Izuku Midoriya sat across the desk with her hands folded and her face the expression of a woman who had quietly prepared herself for one thing and was now trying to rapidly prepare herself for another. Is it a quirk? She asked. Is my son? The output is real, the doctor said carefully. There's definitely something there. But the classifier, he turned the screen so she could see the blinking red flag. Can't place it in any registered quirk category. It's like nothing in the database. He paused. That does happen occasionally with truly novel ability sets. I'll need to file a special classification report with the Quirk Registration Bureau. The file will carry a review flag, periodic reevaluation until we can place it properly. They're going to catalog me, flag my name in a database somewhere. A review flag, which means someone at the Bureau reads my file periodically, checks on me, wonders what I am. The thought was oddly specific for a 4-year-old, but Izuku had always been oddly specific. Someone will be watching the file. I don't know if that's good or bad yet. He pulled out a new notebook. He bought 5 at the discount store after the old one got torn and wrote at the top of the first page. My ability, notes, and observations. Triggered by clapping, hands meeting. Requires 2 targets in visual range. Appears to exchange position of 2 subjects. Felt. No physical strain, no temperature change, no light or sound beyond the clap. Subjects Hayashi and Otani showed momentary disorientation post-switch. Range, uncertain. Duration of exchange, instantaneous. Trigger note, the one came first. The clap sealed it. Which comes first, the intent or the gesture? That last line, I keep coming back to it. I wanted him elsewhere, and then my hands moved, and then he was. Is that how it works? Is the mind the mechanism and the clap just the key that turns it? Or was it just a coincidence of timing? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He practiced in secret in the backyard after school. It took 2 weeks to understand the first rule. He could only swap 2 things at once. 1 clap, 2 targets, 1 exchange. He tried clapping twice fast and switching 3 objects, a tin can, a glass bottle, a shoe, but only the first 2 moved. The third stayed. It took 3 more weeks to understand the second rule. He had to want both targets. Casual observation didn't trigger it. He had to fix his attention on both simultaneously, a double focus that was difficult at first, like holding 2 different thoughts at the same tension at the same time, and then the clap would seal it. The one had always been there first. He understood now that the courtyard clap had been the first real proof of the rule, not an exception to it. It's about intent, he wrote in his notebook. Not just physical action. I have to choose both subjects. The clap is the trigger, but the mind is the mechanism. The very first time it fired, I wanted Hayashi elsewhere before my hands met. I didn't know I was doing it, but I was. That's important. That means this ability isn't random. It was never random. I just didn't understand the shape of it yet. The third rule took 2 months, and it came with a bloody nose and 3 days of what his mother called a bad headache, and what Izuku privately cataloged as consequence of overextension. Range had a limit. He wrote it down as approximately 30 to 40 meters, confident, and beyond 50 meters, risk of injury. Boogie Woogie, he'd taken to calling it in his head, because whatever this was, it moved to its own rhythm, its own strange music, swapping pieces of the world like notes in a jazz riff. The word cursed had come to him too, from somewhere in the fringe research he'd been doing, an old concept, a different language for a different kind of power. He wasn't sure it applied. He wasn't sure it didn't. Whatever you are, he wrote, addressing the ability directly in his notebook, I'm going to understand you. And then I'm going to use you right. Because I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to be a hero even if no one knows yet. Especially if no one knows yet. The day before middle school began, Izuku packed 7 notebooks into his bag and stood in front of his mirror for a long time. He was 10 years old. He looked nothing like a hero. He raised his hands, fixed his eyes on the plastic cup on the left side of his desk and the eraser on the right. Felt that double focus click into place, 2 points of intention, held in the same moment of attention like tuning 2 frequencies at once, and brought his palms together. Clap. The cup and the eraser switched places. Instantly. Cleanly. Middle school is going to be different, he thought. It has to be. Everything is going to be different now. Midoriya Izuku, age 11. Core classification. Pending special. Notes. Subject demonstrates ability to exchange positions of 2 identified objects or persons within a given range. Trigger, deliberate bilateral palm strike clap. Mechanism, unknown. Category, unclassified. Official Quirk Registry, file hashtag IM 112QX. The thing about having a quirk that no one understood was that it gave Izuku a very useful kind of invisibility. At Alder Middle School, the social architecture was built on quirk prestige. You were ranked silently and constantly by what you could do, by the drama of your ability, by its combat potential, by whether it was the kind of thing that made other kids step back in instinctive assessment of threat. Bakugo occupied the peak of this architecture with the total certainty of someone who had never questioned whether he belonged there. Mind doesn't announce itself, Izuku thought, watching from the back of the classroom as Kaken demonstrated his quirk for the third time that week, a casual explosion that left a charm mark on the courtyard fence and impressed everyone into awed silence. Mine is quiet. Mine looks like nothing until it's already happened. That's not a weakness. That's a strategy waiting to be built. He wrote that down. Stealth advantage. Boogie Woogie has no visible wind-up, no gathering of energy, no warning flash. Activation is entirely internal until the clap. Question: is there any way to delay or suppress the clap? Can the trigger be modified? Hitoshi Shinso sat 2 rows to his left and read thick novels during homeroom with the focused efficiency of someone who had long since accepted that class was mostly a waiting exercise. Purple hair, permanent under eyeshadows, and a voice that, when he used it, made people do things they didn't intend to do. Brainwashing, verbal trigger, requires subject to respond to prompt. Post-activation subject follows commands until a sufficient shock breaks the loop. No physical component. Devastating in the right context. Almost universally regarded by their classmates as villainous. They say that about his quirk the way people used to say I was quirkless, Izuku thought. Like the thing defines the person. Like the ability predicts the character. He'd started speaking to Shinso after a particularly ugly hallway exchange where 3 boys had told the purple-haired boy that brainwashing isn't a hero quirk, it's a kidnapper quirk, and Shinso had looked at them with a flatness that went past blankness, the specific absence of someone who has been emptied of their reaction to this by sheer repetition. That was stupid, Izuku said, appearing at Shinsu's elbow after the boys had gone. What they said, it's completely inaccurate. Brainwashing used as a stealth interrogation technique, combined with capture gear, would be incredibly effective in a rescue operation, or crowd control in a panic situation. The application potential is... Shinso looked at him with slight alarm. You the analysis kid? I take notes. Yes. And you're not telling me my quirk is cool, just to mess with me. He's been messed with before. People who've been told their quirk is worthless get cynical about compliments. Izuku recognized the rhythm of it precisely. My quirk swaps the positions of 2 things, Izuku said. The quirk registry can't classify it. I've had nosebleeds testing its range limit. For 2 years, I thought I was quirkless. He paused. I'm not messing with you. Shinso studied him for a long moment. Something in his face rearranged. Not quite a smile, but adjacent to one. Shinso Hitoshi. Midoriya Izuku. 2 weeks later, after school, Shinso said, try to swap me. They were in an empty section of a schoolyard. Shinso stood 15 meters away, arms crossed, with the expression of someone conducting an experiment they're fairly certain they already know the result of. Izuku found Shinso in his focus. One target, need a second, I'll use the fence post at his left, and clapped. Clap. Shinso and the fence post exchanged instantly. Shinso appeared at the post position, stumbled, caught himself. Interesting, Shinso said from his new location. Now me. He pointed at Izuku. Answer me. Is that your real hair color? Don't answer. It's a trigger prompt. He needs a verbal response to. Izuku pressed his lips together. Shinso waited. Nothing happened. Shinso walked back toward him. Brainwashing doesn't work on people who don't respond. You just went silent. Your quirk needs a verbal answer as a pathway, Izuku said, pulling out his notebook immediately. I knew that theoretically, but you need engagement. If someone just stops talking, it fails completely. Against the right person, yes. A pause. You're not normal, Midoriya. I know. I meant it as a compliment. I found someone who understands the language of misunderstood. Izuku wrote in the margin of Notebook 8 that evening. He tested his quirk on me the way I would have directly, practically immediately. We're the same kind of thinker. Note to self, don't underestimate where allies appear. Uraraka Achiko transferred to Aldera in the spring semester with a laugh too big for the classroom and a quirk that made objects weightless by the touch of 5 fingers. She used it to make the class guinea pig float in its cage, and everyone lost their minds with delight. She also, within 2 weeks of arrival, sat down across from Izuku in the library and pointed at his notebook. Is that a chart of everyone's quirks? It's an analysis matrix. Strengths, limitations, tactical applications. That is the coolest and most unnerving thing I've ever seen. She pulled the notebook toward her without asking, which startled him so much he forgot to protest. You're in here, he said carefully. Page 14. 0 gravity. 5-finger contact activation. Weight nullification for non-living objects. Duration until you release touch or clap to cancel. The clap, she said, looking up. Yours activates with a clap too, right? I heard about it. You're the one who switched those 2 boys around in 4th grade, yeah? She grinned. I was jealous. My quirk makes things float. Yours makes things teleport. Not teleport. He started to correct automatically and then stopped. She wasn't wrong. It was a limited kind of teleportation, constrained bilateral, requiring a specific trigger. But the instinct was sound. She's not afraid of it. She thinks it's cool. He felt something loosen slightly in his chest that he hadn't realized was tight. Can I come watch you practice sometime? Uraraka asked, handing the notebook back. The question surprised him into honesty. I practice alone. I haven't told people. I know. I wouldn't tell anyone. She said it simply, without pressing, without making a promise of it. Just a statement of fact. I do solo practice too. My quirk makes me nauseous if I overuse it. Not exactly a crowd pleaser to watch someone throw up, because they floated too many things. She's been managing a limitation alone. She understands the difference between practicing a quirk and studying one. Maybe, he said, someday, when I understand it better myself. She nodded, satisfied with maybe, and went back to her homework. Izuku added a column to her page in the analysis matrix, Tactical Patience. Worth watching. He first saw the Thin Man on a Tuesday in October. The man was skeletal. Not thin, but skeletal, with the precise suggestion of a body that had been hollowed out and then thoughtfully returned to a shape that could walk around and carry things. He had yellow hair and narrow blue eyes, and he moved with a deliberate lightness that Izuku's analytical mind immediately flagged as compensating for something. Too careful, too controlled, like someone who has learned to inhabit a body that is not the body they expect to have. He wore a teacher's aide badge from the high school campus. He carried a thermos of what smelled like some kind of nutritional supplement. On the 3rd Tuesday, Izuku saw him watching from behind the chain-link fence of the middle school courtyard as Izuku practiced, targeting 2 plastic bottles 15 meters apart, bringing his hands together with a clean clap and watching them swap. He's watching me. He's been watching me. The Thin Man caught him looking and smiled. It was a warm smile with something private and sad living behind it. The smile of someone carrying a weight they've carried long enough that they've learned to be graceful about it, and he raised one hand in a small wave. Izuku walked to the fence. You're very precise, the Thin Man said. Consistent activation. Clean selection. Not many young people have that kind of control at your age. I practice, Izuku said. I know. I've been watching you practice. He's not embarrassed about it. Transparency as a strategy, or just as a personality. Which one? What's your name? Izuku asked. Yagi Tashinori. The Thin Man tilted his head. And you are Midoriya, Izuku. 11 years old, core classification pending special designation, ability registered as position exchange with bilateral activation trigger. He paused. I did some reading. What? There it is. That's the question. Not, who are you, but why are you here? Why does a teacher's aide at the high school read the middle school quirk registry notes? I've been looking for someone, Yagi said finally. For a long time. Someone with potential. Someone with a certain quality. A dry, restrained cough into the back of his hand. I'm not certain yet whether you're that person, but I think. He stopped himself, smiled again. I think you're worth watching, he said. Is that all right with you, Midoriya? Worth watching. Not worth it the way Kaken said it. Dismissal, erasure, but worth watching the way you'd say it about a fire just starting. About something that has not yet reached its full size. Yes, Izuku said. That's all right with me. Yagi held his gaze for a moment longer than the conversation required. The way you look at something you're deciding to trust. And then he nodded once and turned to go. Izuku watched him walk, noting the slight effort in each step, the way his coat moved too loosely over his shoulders, the angle of his chin that said, "This body is not what I was, but I will make it enough." I don't know who you are, Yagi-san, he thought, but I know that look. I've worn it since I was 4. Heroes react. The best heroes pre-act. Notebook number 10. Margin note. Midoriya Izuku, age 12. The villain came out of nowhere, which was how villains prefer to operate. And he came in on a Wednesday afternoon in the kind of ordinary moment that ordinary moments don't survive being in. The sun was out, and school had just let out, and Izuku was walking home with his bag full of notebooks. And then there was screaming from the direction of the commercial district. Threat assessment, automatic now. Distance, roughly 200 meters. Noise type, panic, not pain. So no immediate casualties yet. Source, figure moving through the street. Large, quirk type, unclear. Local heroes haven't responded yet. Window, open. He was running before he'd fully decided to run. The villain was broad-shouldered and manic, with razor-sharp bone protrusions from his forearms. Ossification or bone extrusion type. Offensive use emitter, risk level high in close range. And he was cutting off exit routes on the left side of the commercial strip, herding the crowd toward an alley that would bottleneck. If they bottleneck and he reaches them there, it becomes a hostage situation or worse. Someone needs to redirect the crowd or redirect him. No hero response yet. Just me. There were 2 police officers at the entrance of the market. One had his hand on his radio. The other was trying to get people to move away from the exit the villain was cutting toward, which meant the officer was standing in the most dangerous corridor in the scene. The officer near the exit, Izuku thought, and the display rack at the mouth of the alley. If I can swap them, pull the officer out of the danger corridor, and put the rack in his place, the villain's forward momentum is broken. It creates a second of confusion, and the crowd gets a clearer evacuation line to the right. He found both targets. The double focus clicked into place. 2 points of attention held taut like the 2 ends of a drawn string, and his palms came together. Clap. The officer vanished from the mouth of the alley and materialized, stumbling and disoriented, 15 feet to the right, while clear of the villain's trajectory. The display rack appeared in the space the officer had occupied with a crash of metal that sent product spinning across the street, and the villain flinched back, turned toward the sound, and lost his herding line. It worked. The villain's looking at the rack. The crowd is moving. They're seeing the gap. Deku. Bakugo's voice, very close, very sharp. Izuku spun. Katsuki Bakugo was standing 8 feet away, school bag thrown, hands sparking at his sides, expression burning with an anger that had something white-hot and genuine at its core. Not the casual contempt of daily life, but the specific fury of someone who has been thoroughly, fundamentally startled. What the hell was that? Not now. The villain was still. What the hell was that? He saw all of it. He's been following me from school. He's been watching me the same way I've been watching him, and I didn't. The villain, frustrated by the obstacle, drove one bone blade through the display rack. Metal shrieked. Bakugo's attention snapped to it. Later, Bakugo said, with the absolute command of someone who sorted everything into now and later with military precision. He raised both hands, palms crackling. I'm handling this. He's going to charge in from the front. The dominant side bone blades will be right in his attack path. He has the firepower to win. He always has the firepower to win, but he'll take a cut, and I can see the angle from here. I can see exactly, unless he fixed 2 targets, Bakugo's current position, and a point 15 feet to the left, the villain's non-dominant side, where the bone blades couldn't reach as efficiently. He felt the double focus lock. Clap. Bakugo disappeared, and reappeared mid-stride at the new angle. His expression in that half-second of disorientation was a small private masterpiece of pure fury. And then he was already moving, already committed, already bringing his palms together in a counter that had every advantage Izuku had just handed him. The explosion caught the villain full in the chest from the safest possible angle. The villain hit the street and stayed there. Two heroes arrived 14 seconds later. They secured the villain. The officer Izuku had moved was sitting on the curb with his head in his hands, very confused about geography. Then Bakugo grabbed him by the collar. "You moved me. You were going to attack from a bad angle," Izuku said. His voice was calmer than he felt. "The bone blades, if you'd gone in from the front. I didn't ask for your help." "I know." Bakugo's grip tightened. His eyes were doing the thing. Something narrow and hungry and counting, the look of someone who has been running a calculation for years and has just received a new variable that won't fit any of his existing equations. He was covering it with anger, burying it deep, but Izuku had been reading Katsuki Bakugo his entire life. He's not just angry. He's trying to figure out what I am. He's been trying since 4th grade, and he still doesn't have enough data, and it's eating him in that. That is the most Kaken thing about this whole situation. "What the hell is your quirk, Deku?" Izuku looked at him steadily. "I'll tell you someday. When I'm ready." Bakugo released his collar. He stepped back. He held that calculating, hungry, furious gaze for one more second, then turned and walked away without another word. The silence is more interesting than anything he could have said, Izuku noted in his internal file on Katsuki Bakugo. He walked away from information he wants. That's control. I've never seen him exercise that kind of control before. You move him on purpose. Yagi was beside him now, thermos in hand. The crowd was dispersing. The afternoon light had the quality it gets after something sudden, brighter than before, like the world was showing off that it was still there. He was going to get hurt, Izuku said. He was going to win. Yagi corrected gently. You know that. He would have won from the front angle. You know that too. He's right. Kaken would have won. He would have taken a cut, but he would have won. So why did I? I didn't want him to get hurt, Izuku said, and the simplicity of it landed in his own ears with more weight than he expected. Yagi looked at him for a very long time. Midoriya-kun, I would very much like to talk to you seriously, as soon as you're willing. Not today. Today you should go home and let your hand stop shaking. He glanced down. Izuku's hands were, in fact, shaking slightly. He hadn't noticed. But soon. There's something I'd like to offer you. He paused, with the particular weight of someone selecting their last word carefully. And something I'd like to tell you about yourself. Izuku nodded. He was already filing the conversation away, already making notes. And then he caught a movement at the edge of the dispersing crowd. A woman in gray, plain clothes, no hero badge, no emergency responder ID. She wasn't looking at the villain containment. She was looking at him. Her expression was carefully empty, the specific blankness of someone making sure their face does not communicate what they are thinking. She turned and walked away before he could do more than note her. Gray coat, medium height, hair pinned back, age approximately 35 to 40, no visible quirk manifestation. Watching me specifically, not the instant sight. Someone read my file, he thought, with sudden cold clarity. Someone at the bureau, or someone who has access to the bureau, read the special designation flag and came to look at what it was pointing at. I don't know if that's good or bad yet. File it. Watch for her again. The strongest technique is not the one that destroys the most. It's the one that changes the most with the least. Notebook number 11. Midoriya Izuku, age 13. Yagi Tashinori had very strong opinions about what it meant to be a hero, and he expressed them the way someone does when they've been careful for a long time about which doors they open. Not through lectures, but through questions shaped like gifts, questions that already contain the answer inside them, waiting to be found. If you could exchange anything, any two things, with no limitation, what would you use it for? They were at Dagoba Municipal Beach, which had been, over the past 3 months, slowly becoming a different place. Izuku had taken to clearing it, incrementally, methodically, one exchange at a time, swapping heavy debris to the periphery where he could move it more easily. Mountains of discarded appliances had given way to stretches of actual sand. It felt obscurely like practicing both the technique and something about himself at the same time. Exchange anything, he repeated, working through it analytically. In a combat scenario, swap the attacker's position with a safe area. Swap a wounded ally to cover. Swap a support item to a partner who needs it. In a rescue scenario, he stopped. Because he'd been circling this thought for months, and it was only now, sitting in the cleared sand section of the beach with the late afternoon light, doing something gold with the water, that it clicked fully into place. In a rescue scenario, you weren't fighting the villain. You were fighting distance and position. The victim was here, safety was there. And Boogie Woogie was the ultimate argument against the tyranny of here and there. I can swap a person in danger with a person in safety, he said slowly. I can move a civilian out of a collapsing building by swapping them with a responder outside the perimeter. I can clear a hostage by swapping them with an object in the same space as their captor. He was writing fast in Notebook 11. Boogie Woogie Tactical Doctrine, Draft 3. Offensive, Position Sabotage, Attack Angle Creation, Weapon Displacement. Defensive, Personal Escape, Self-Swap, Ally Extraction, Barrier Creation. Rescue, Civilian Extraction from Hazard Zone, requires pre-placed anchor objects for max efficiency. Vertical Rescue, swap falling person with stationary safe altitude object. Momentum Disruption Test. Inconclusive. Support, Equipment Relay, Distraction Creation, Confusion Tactics, Serial Swapping. Show me the vertical rescue theory, Yagi said quietly. Izuku looked at a section of wreckage where a twisted piece of scaffold formed a platform about 12 feet off the ground. He picked up a stone, climbed the scaffold, set the stone on the edge, came down, set a heavy crate in position below it, then pushed the stone off the edge while targeting it and the crate simultaneously. Clap! The falling stone and the stationary crate exchanged. The stone appeared at ground level, but its falling momentum seemed, for a fraction of a second, disrupted. The crate appeared at height, then fell, crashing onto the scaffold. The exchange sets position, but the momentum reading is reset? Not fully. The stone still had some downward movement after the swap. It's as if the exchange briefly pauses velocity and then reapplies a fraction of it. So a falling person would land lighter. If I timed it right, he wrote for 4 minutes straight. Yagi watched him write, with the expression of someone witnessing something they've been waiting for. You approach this like an engineer, Yagi said. Someone has to. Izuku didn't look up. If I don't understand it, I'm just swinging it around and hoping. And hoping isn't good enough. The self-swap discovery came on a cold November morning through an accident his brain was already primed to recognize. He'd been running exchanges between small objects for 40 minutes when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, a message from Uraraka about homework, and in a split second where his concentration fractured, he still clapped. Force of habit. The tin can and the stone exchanged. He barely noticed. What he noticed was that his phone, in his pocket, in his left hand, had moved to his right hand. He stood looking at it for a full 3 seconds. I swapped my phone between my own hands. My own hands. One target can be something I'm holding. Maybe something attached to me. Maybe even me. 2 hours of testing confirmed it. He could exchange himself with any other target within range. Properly placed, any object in his visual field could become an instant repositioning point. He could throw something and then be there. He laughed, the unguarded kind, the kind that surprises you when it comes out. Then he immediately tried to use this to execute a feint he'd been theorizing. 2 rapid swaps in sequence, moving himself and an object in the same beat to create a false positional echo. The clap fired. The first swap worked. He tried to hold the second target lock while still moving from the first exchange. The world went white. He hit the sand on one knee, and his vision split into 2 versions of itself. One real, one still showing him the position he'd just left, and his nose was running blood before he'd finished falling. His hands wouldn't unclench. The inside of his head felt like it had been wrung like a cloth. You can't occupy 2 positional states at once. You can't run two instances of yourself through the exchange. The mind is the mechanism, and you try to run two processes simultaneously in the system. Rejected it. He sat in the sand for 12 minutes with his eyes closed and his notebook open on his knee, writing blind until his handwriting came back. Limit confirmed. Cannot chain personal swap into immediate second personal swap. The technique cannot process two self-states simultaneously. Recovery time, approximately 10 to 12 minutes for minor version. This is the ceiling. Understand it. Respect it. Work within it. The freedom is real. The ceiling is also real. Both things are true, and neither one cancels the other. He opened Notebook 12 and started a new section before he'd finished running home. I need to ask you something, Izuku said to Yagi the following week. Ask Yagi said. The Quirk Registry Review Board wants to run me through standard testing before the UA application window. My quirk doesn't perform in those tests. You can't quantify a position exchange in newtons or joules. If they can't quantify it, they'll mark it as negligible classification, Yagi said quietly. Not a question, which means I won't qualify for the hero course entrance exam. The beach was quiet. A gull passed overhead. Yagi set down his thermos. Do you want to be a hero, Midoriya? Do I want to be a hero? I have 12 notebooks. I have a tactical doctrine with subheadings. I moved a grown man out of the path of a boneblade villain and did the angle math in the same second. I have wanted this since before I had anything to want it with. Yes, Izuku said. With everything I have. Yagi nodded. Then let me help with the classification problem. I know people who understand unusual things. He paused. And there's something else I'd like to offer you. But first, there's a gap I want you to think about. A specific kind of gap. What kind of gap? Your technique moves things. It's elegant. One of the most tactically flexible abilities I've seen in 40 years of watching heroes work. But it requires the target to be movable. Yagi's voice was even, not cruel. The voice of a doctor describing a condition, not a flaw. There are quirks that anchor a person's position absolutely. Nullification fields, gravity locks, certain types of fusion with surface abilities. An opponent whose quirk makes them immovable, genuinely, physically position-locked, is someone Boogie Woogie cannot touch. I knew this. Abstractly. I've written it in the limitations column. But hearing it said aloud as a specific category of opponent, a villain whose entire ability counters mine precisely, it sits differently. It sits like a real thing instead of a theoretical one. The thing I'd like to offer you, Yagi said carefully, closes that gap, among other things. But I don't want you to think of it as filling a hole. I want you to understand that you're already a complete fighter with what you have. This would be a second instrument added to an orchestra that can already play. It wouldn't replace what you've built, but it would make you capable of things that are currently outside your reach. He looked at Izuku with the full weight of everything he wasn't saying yet. I'm not ready to tell you the full story today, he said, but I want you to sit with the question, because when I do tell you, the offer is real, and the answer needs to be yours. What closes a gap like that? What kind of offer requires that kind of setup? What does this thin, careful, hollowed-out man carry that he can give? I have 3 notebooks on Yagi Tashinori, and none of them have enough information. Notebook 13. First line. What is Yagi Tashinori's quirk? Even the technique that rearranges the world cannot undo what has already been done. That is not a flaw. That is simply time. Notebook number 13. Midoriya Izuku, age 13. The day it went wrong began with a Tuesday morning that had no intention of going wrong. In the hallway before first period, Shinso fell in a step beside him without announcement. The specific brand of companionship that doesn't require preamble, and looked at the side of Izuku's face for 3 full seconds. You look like someone who hasn't slept because they're thinking too loudly, Shinso said. Izuku blinked. I'm fine. That was a statement, not a question. I wasn't asking. He disappeared into his classroom before Izuku could form a response. Izuku stood in the hallway for a moment, holding the 7 words. You look like you're thinking too loudly, and found that they had, somehow, made the tight thing in his chest slightly less tight. He saw it. He noticed and said it and left. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just noted it. The way I would. The way two people who speak the same language of paying attention speak to each other. He filed it, added it to the Shinso column. The attack came at 4:47 p.m. above Dagoba Beach. Izuku had been running self-swap drills when he heard the first sound. Not a fight, a thin, high crack of distressed metal from the direction of the road above the beach. Then footsteps, multiple, moving fast. Then Yagi's voice, sharp in a way he'd never heard it, sharp with the snap of someone who has been trained for command. He was up the beach bank and over the seawall in 8 seconds. The villain calling himself Decay's Edge was not the kind of villain you saw in the news. He was precise and quiet and wore civilian clothes, and his quirk was contact decomposition, slow acting, left-hand touch. He had Yagi by the arm. 2 flanking men blocked the retreat routes. They know who he is. They know what he was. This is targeted. Yagi-san, who is thin and sick and who carries something I don't fully understand but know is important. You've gotten sloppy in your decline, Decay's Edge said. His voice was flat with old grievance. The voice of someone reciting a speech they've rehearsed for years. I used to be afraid of you, you know. 12 years ago. Before your fight, took my quirk's range permanently. Before I became, he glanced at his own left hand with the specific hatred of someone whose relationship with their own body was destroyed by someone else. So I've been waiting. For you to become small enough. Diminished by all might. Hunting the thing that unmade him. This isn't random villain aggression. This is consequence. Years of it. Izuku's hands came up. He found targets, Decay's Edge, and an open stretch of road 20 meters away. Clap. Decay's Edge was 20 meters away, stumbling on unfamiliar ground. Yagi was free, but not unharmed. The decomposition had touched his sleeve, the fabric already showing the pale, crumbling spread working toward the skin beneath. Yagi looked down at it with an expression that went past tiredness into something older. The expression of someone who has been running toward an ending for a long time and is beginning to see the distance close. The 2 flanking men were moving. Clap. One flanker swapped with a steel pipe from the debris pile. Clap. Second flanker swapped with a car wheel. Both down. 3 exchanges in under 90 seconds. Izuku's vision had the beginning of a gray edge. Overextension coming. Frequency limit, not range. I have maybe 2 more clean exchanges. Decay's Edge is back on his feet and closing. I need to. Midoriya. Yagi's voice commanding. Stop. Think. He stopped. Decay's Edge was looking at him now, assessing, recalculating. A child, he said, with something between contempt and something that might have been surprise. You're letting a child defend you. He turned to Yagi. That's what you're reduced to. He's right. He's standing there, and he's correct about the math of this situation. Yagi can't fight. I'm almost at my limit. The heroes won't arrive for minutes. He knows it. He wants us to know he knows it. And there are things Boogie Woogie cannot do. It cannot heal the decomposition already spreading on Yagi's arm. It cannot undo damage that is already done. It can only move, and some damage is not about position. It's about time, and time doesn't exchange. The gray edge at his vision was thickening. One more good exchange in him. Maybe. Make it count. Make it exactly count. He looked at Decay's Edge. He looked at the seawall ledge, 10 meters high, and a massive section of debris he'd stacked there 2 weeks ago during clearing. 600 kilograms, roughly. He fixed both targets, felt the double focus lock, held it. Decay's Edge saw his eyes move. Started forward. Clap. Decay's Edge appeared on the seawall ledge, 10 meters above the beach, standing on the edge in sudden disorientation. 600 kilograms of debris appeared on the road where he'd been, with a crash that shook the pavement and scattered debris across 40 meters. Decay's Edge teetered. Fell. Hit the beach below. Sand stopped what stone would not have. He was down and breathing, and that was the right outcome. Izuku sat down on the road. Not dramatically, just his legs stopped working and the road was there. He sat with his hands open on his knees and his vision gray at every edge and blood running freely from his nose, and he didn't move for a while. He didn't try to. He just let the world be the size that it was. The cracked road surface, the scattered debris, the sound of sirens starting somewhere in the distance, the faint chemical smell of decay's edges touch still on the air. I used everything. Every exchange. Emergency reserve included. I'm empty. And that's okay. That's the correct outcome for this situation. You don't hold back the last move. You don't keep something in reserve when the thing you're protecting is right there. You spend it. That's what it's for. But I can't heal him. I couldn't heal him even with 100 exchanges left. I can move anything in the world, and I couldn't move that. The damage already on his arm, the years of decline, the weight of everything this man has carried and is still carrying. There's no exchange for that. There's no swap that reverses time. Some things don't have a position to correct. They just are. And the only answer to them is, you do what you can with what you have, and then you sit in the road, and then you get up. Yagi was beside him, crouching with effort, pressing something clean to his nose. His sleeve, where the decomposition had touched it, had been cut away. Without it, his arm looked thin in the evening light, terribly thin, like something precious stored too long in the wrong conditions. You should have run, Yagi said, very quietly. I know. He was targeting me, not you. You could have. I know. Yagi was quiet. When Izuku could see clearly again, he looked up and found that face looking back at him. The sadness, the certainty, and underneath it something that Izuku had been circling for months without naming. He named it now. Love. Not like that. But the way you look at something you've been waiting for and then found. The way you'd look at something you'd been afraid you wouldn't find in time. The way All Might looks at a future hero. Yagi-san, he said. Who are you? Actually. A long pause. The heroes arrived. Decay's edge was secured. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Izuku noted it automatically. That, Yagi said, is a story I've been waiting to tell you. But I'd like to tell it in a place with better seating. He smiled, that warm, sad, enormous smile. There's also the matter of the offer I mentioned. I think, after today, it may be time for both conversations. Something vast behind his face, Izuku thought. Something that had once been enormous. Even depleted, even hollowed, even reduced to this thin, careful man crouching over a bleeding 13-year-old on a road above a beach. Still the most heroic thing I've ever seen. I'm ready to hear it, Izuku said. One who saves with a smile. That's the kind of hero I'll be. All Might. Notebook number 1. Midoriya Izuku, age 4. The exam was held on the last Saturday in February. In the morning of it, Izuku ate breakfast alone in the kitchen while his mother pretended to read a magazine and checked on him every 45 seconds. She's scared for me. She doesn't know how to say it. She never recovered from the day we were told I was quirkless. It lives in her now, that particular fear, the fear of the bottom falling out of things. And I can't fully protect her from it. I can only be ready. I can only have done the work. He had done the work. 13 notebooks. 416 tactical scenarios. 60-meter controlled range. Cell swap velocity. 1.8 seconds from throw to exchange. Maximum serial exchanges before mandatory rest. 5 at 60-second intervals. Recommended operational ceiling per engagement. For exchanges plus 1 personal emergency reserve. Now prove it. The practical exam was a 10-minute urban combat simulation. 3 types of robots, color-coded by point value, moving through a built environment. Izuku had spent the briefing doing 2 things. Listening carefully and identifying, in the brief tour footage, every piece of a simulated city that could serve as a swap anchor. Postboxes, fire hydrants, newspaper stands, dumpsters, parked vehicles, rooftop infrastructure, everything that won't move on its own, but that I can move by swapping something else to its position. He reached into his bag and pulled out 12 small colored anchor stones, each one numbered on his palm with marker. He'd prepared them the night before. The gate opened and everyone sprinted. Bakugo went forward like a controlled detonation. A girl with engines in her calves rocketed overhead. A red-haired boy activated a hardening quirk and hit the first 1-point bot full force. The simulated city filled with light and sound and the professional chaos of people who had been training for this their whole lives. Don't fight like them. Don't try to fight like them. You're not built for that, and they're not built for what you can do. He threw Anchor Stone 1, A good overhand throw, 40 meters directly over the nearest building sector wall. While it was in the air, he was already finding his first target, a 2-point robot crossing an intersection. Anchor placed at the intersection rooftop. Swap, meet a rooftop. High ground, above sensor range. Clap. He was on the rooftop. Below him, the 2-point bot, sensors sweeping at street level, unaware of the boy crouching in its blind spot above. The prop building across the gap had an unsupported overhang, designed to hold a person's weight, not a 2-ton robot. Clap. The bot appeared on the overhang. The overhang buckled. The bot fell 8 meters into the gap between buildings, wedged and non-functional. 2 points. 2 points. 1 exchange used. No injury. 3 exchanges left in this sequence. He threw Anchor Stone 2 toward the street-level fountain, clap, and was there, crouching, watching 3 1-point bots corner a cluster of examinees who'd backed into a dead end. One of them, a small girl with a complex quirk affecting her limbs, was backed against a wall, her ankle wrong. Rescue opportunity. 3 bots. 2 exchanges left, and I don't need to defeat them all. I need to create an opening. Swap the lead bot with the bot at the back of the formation. Backbot was facing away. Now it's facing its own allies. 2 seconds of reorientation. 2 seconds is enough. Clap. The 2 bots swapped. The lead unit's collision avoidance protocols fired. It stopped. The others adjusted. The girl saw the gap and ran, and so did the others. He was on 4 exchanges and barely 90 seconds in when the alarm sounded. Not the end of exam alarm. The low, bone-deep groan of something massive moving. The wall at the end of street block 7 cracked, and cracked again, and folded, and the 0-point villain stepped through. 30 meters tall, moving with the grinding certainty of things that don't need a hurry. 0 points. The instruction had been clear. This is here to test when to retreat, and to test whether anyone is heroic enough, stupid enough, brave enough to do anything anyway. Most examinees were running. Under one of the 0-point bots, sweeping leg movements, the leg like a falling building. There was a girl who had tripped. Brown hair, round face. Uraraka. Achiko Uraraka was under the foot of a 30-meter combat robot, and she couldn't move, and she was going to be crushed, and this is not a simulation anymore. He was running before he completed the analysis. 3 anchor stones left. 1 exchange before mandatory rest. The bot's foot was descending. For seconds, maybe 5. She weighs approximately 50 kilograms. The bot's foot is 4 meters wide. I need to move her out of a 4-meter target area to something at approximately her height level or lower. Clear the fall zone. He threw Anchor Stone 3 toward the wall beside her. Not at her, not in the robot's path, and swapped himself to it in the same motion. Clap. He was at the wall. He could see her directly. The bot's foot 3 seconds up. The fountain, 20 meters behind us. Ground level. She'd arrive at ground level. Clear the fall zone. I have 1 exchange. 1 exchange. 1. Make it exactly right. He fixed both targets with the double focus. Her there, the fountain there, and held it for exactly 1 second. Not rushing. Not panicking. Exact. The whole world in those 2 fixed points. Clap. Uraraka appeared at the fountain. Safe. Standing. Confused and looking at her own hands. The robot's foot came down where she'd been, and the impact shockwave knocked Izuku off his feet. He hit the street, rolled, came up with gray at the edges of his vision, and his hands shaking and his nose beginning to bleed. He had no exchanges left. He was standing in the path of a 30-meter robot with nothing but his own legs and 12 notebooks worth of analysis he could no longer act on. Well, you did the important part. He looked up at the robot and, despite everything, felt something that was not quite a smile and was exactly a smile. I saved someone. That's what heroes do. You spend your last move on the person who needs it, and you face what comes next. Even if what comes next is 30 meters tall and has no feelings about stepping on people. The exam ended 30 seconds later. The simulation clock hit 0. The 0-point bot locked down. Someone very tall in a medical scarf was gliding toward him with the expression of a person who had very specific opinions about middle school boys standing in the path of giant robots. He accepted the bandaging. He accepted the small, luminous healing touch that made the gray recede. He sat on a curb in the simulated city and thought, I did what I could with what I have. Whatever the score is, whatever the number is, I did what I could, and it was enough to be someone who does that. That's who I am now. Whatever the number is, it was enough. You can't start the next song until you've let the last note finish. Notebook number 14, Midoriya Izuku, age 13. The letter came on a Thursday, in a thick cream-white envelope, and it sat on the kitchen table untouched for 6 minutes, because Izuku's hands had stopped cooperating. The envelope is the right size for an acceptance package. Thick. That can mean stop. Just open it. You know what you did. Whatever the number says about the score, you know what happened in that simulation. Open the envelope. He opened the envelope. A small holographic chip fell onto the table. He held it in the light, and Present Mike appeared, hair improbable, grin enormous, and began to speak. Combat points for examinee 4516. Midoriya Izuku, total 28 points. Not, and let's be honest, not the highest score. But here's the thing about UA's exam. 28. That's low. But he's still talking. Why is there more if? We don't just score combat. Because heroics isn't just combat. Rescue points evaluated by our medical support division based on verified civilian analog saves, contribution to the safety of fellow examinees, and decisive action under pressure. Examinee 4516. 52 rescue points. 52. Total score, 80 points. Examinee 4516 Midoriya Izuku. Welcome, young hero, to UA High School, Class 1A. Izuku sat down on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. His legs simply registered the news and decided to process it at ground level. He sat with the holographic chip in his hand and felt something that was too large for crying and too complete for celebration. Arrival. The feeling of being somewhere you've been trying to get to for a very long time. Izuku. His mother appeared in the doorway. She saw his face. She read it, all of it, the whole story, in one look, and then she sat down on the floor next to him and put her arms around him and said absolutely nothing at all, which was exactly right. Yagi was at the beach when he went to tell him. Long stretches of actual sand now, bright under the spring light. Well, Yagi said, not turning from the water. 80 points. 28 combat, 52 rescue. Yagi turned. His expression had resolved into something simple. The sadness still present, but different now. The sadness that comes from watching something end and something begin at the same moment. And underneath it, warm and certain and real, pride. 52 rescue points, he said quietly, in an exam designed around combat. I couldn't destroy the robots, Izuku said. So, I moved people instead. I moved people to safety instead of moving threats away from it. It's the same principle. Exchange. Position. What matters is what ends up where at the end. Yagi looked at him for a long moment. Then he spoke. My real name is Yagi Tashinori. I am the holder of a transferable power called One for All. I was, until some time ago, the #1 hero in the world, known publicly as All Might. All Might. I knew. Some part of me knew. The physical description, the way heroes respond to his presence, the things he says when he thinks I'm not listening. I knew, and I didn't let myself know, because knowing would have made it. All Might, the symbol of peace, in front of me. I've been looking for a successor for a long time. Yagi continued. One for All must be passed on. It cannot die with me. I need someone worthy. He looked at Izuku directly. I've been watching you for almost 2 years. I watched you move a girl out of the path of a 30-meter robot with your last exchange, knowing you'd have nothing left. I'd already passed my limit, Izuku said. The emergency reserve. You used the last thing you had to save someone else. And that's not why I'm making this offer. Yagi paused. You already have quirk. An extraordinary one. You don't need mine to become a hero. You've proven that. Then what? But you remember what I told you about the gap. The immovable opponent. The quirk that locks position absolutely. The one kind of enemy I cannot touch. One for all closes that gap, Yagi said. It doesn't replace what you've built. It adds force to it. With raw strength behind you, a position-locked opponent is no longer untouchable. You move them not with the exchange, but with your hands. He held Izuku's gaze. 2 instruments. 1 orchestra. The exchange as precision and the power as force. An orchestra. I thought it exactly that way. A conductor with 2 different sounds available. One for surgery. One for the moments when surgery isn't enough. It's a real dilemma now. I can hear it as one. Because he's right, there is a gap. I've known about the gap, and he's holding something that closes it. But I'm also already enough. He said so. I proved it. Which means the choice is genuinely mine. Which means what I do with it is about who I want to be, not about what I need to survive. I need to think about it, Izuku said. Yagi nodded. The nod of someone who expected exactly that answer and is glad to receive it. Take the time you need. You have until the first day of term. He ran into Bakugo at the convenience store 2 days later. Accidental. Bakugo was in line with a sports drink and earbuds around his neck, and Izuku was reaching past him for a bottle of tea, and for one moment they were closer than they'd been in months with nowhere to go. Bakugo looked at him. The look he'd been running, that narrow, hungry, counting look, held for 3 seconds. Then, you got in, didn't you? Not a question. A recognition. Yeah, Izuku said. Bakugo looked down at his phone, then back up, and then, quietly, without drama, without the sneer. Don't waste it. Catch up. He paid for his drink and left. Don't waste it. Not stay on my way. Not, you'll never be as good as me. Not silence, or contempt, or catch up. Kakin. You've been watching me from a distance for 9 years, trying to understand what I am. And you just told me, in the only way you know how to say anything, that you see me. That you're treating me like something worth catching up to. I'm going to hear those 2 words for the rest of my career. Notebook 14. First page. I got into UA. I got in as myself, with Boogie Woogie, with the exchanges, with the notes and the theory and the doctrine. I got in by moving people to safety instead of destroying things. That feels important to know about who I am. Yagi-san, All Might, offer me a choice and I haven't made it yet. I've been thinking about what it means to have enough. About whether more is always the answer when enough is already possible. But I also know about the gap. I know there's a kind of opponent I can't currently touch. And I know that a hero who can almost save everyone is not the same as a hero who can save everyone. But that's not the first question. At the bottom of the first page, in letters slightly larger than the rest, underlined twice. What kind of hero do I want to be? I've known the answer since I was 4 years old watching All Might on that television in the waiting room. The kind that moves toward people instead of away from danger. The kind that exchanges their own safety for someone else's. The kind that makes the world rearrange itself, one clap at a time. He closed the notebook. He smiled. Plus ultra, he thought. Plus ultra, you absolute nerd. You did it. Now do it more.